Folks, I'm going to continue a series I started in last year about what people do in their work, what it's like to be them in their jobs and their careers. And I've got a fun person here who's here to talk with you about being a marketing analyst. Laura, thank you for making time today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So what has been your exact title in your role?
In the past, my job really has always been senior marketing analyst. I am reaching out to try to become a senior marketing manager of analysis, but truly my job title is senior marketing analyst.
Thank you. And what exactly do you do? What sort of duties or responsibilities do you have in your work?
So I have over 10 years of marketing insight analysis, project management, and work experience, working with taking the data from multiple sources into something that can make sense to a layman as well as a senior manager. So that's what I'm trying to do, some strategic, some operational, gaining information by working for 4 major retailers: TJX, Staples, Dress Barn, and Dell EMC.
Cool. So what is it? So what is it like doing what you do? Interesting, not interesting, exciting, mundane? What's it like?
It's a bit of everything. So there's certainly mundane parts where you're basically doing rote, pulling data off of data sets like core metrics or for the web stuff or Adobe Analytics or Salesforce to get data from different sources. That pretty much is a standard thing. There's lots of time we can automate that process, but unfortunately, the workplaces that I've worked in, that hasn't been developed yet. Developing, but not automated as of say. But when I left Dell, there was actually a big initiative to get those data sets kind of loaded already into one place so you could pull the data out. So working with social media, working with the IT team, working with the digital team, working with all sorts of collaborative teams to make sure data is a way that you can make those insights because you know the data is great.
Gotcha. How much job security do you have or did you have in this role?
I was the contractor for Dell EMC. I was there for 4.5 years. And the reason my contract was not renewed is when Dell took over EMC in September 2016, they said, possibly we're only having contractors for 2 years. So when September 18 came around, they said, no more contractors, please leave. So I'm sorry, I keep pulling my phone down. So I did not have job security. So I am at the present time unemployed.
Sorry to hear it. And you did have a 4+ year run at Dell.
Absolutely.
That's
great
a lot,
experience.
And that's a lot better than a lot of full-time people get.
Right.
So a typical day for you, what was that like?
I guess the first thing I did was make sure the leads that were coming through in a global sense were making it through the system. So if there were leads, say from Singapore, that weren't being loaded into the system, they were getting hung up for some reason, I would contact that person out in the Asia Pacific because I know that she was going to leave really soon to say, Sonia, are you still on track to give us the data? So that was the beginning of a day, making sure leads were going through. Then I would update dashboards depending on where it was in the quarter or month. There were some that were very automated, and all I did was have to pull down a file and load it into a dashboard that had already been created. But then there were some times when I have meetings with in-person people, but a lot of the job at Dell EMC was based on remote connections. So it would be a WebEx, something similar to what we're doing now, would be most of my meetings.
Nice. What kind of hours did you tend to put in?
Primarily at the normal 40-hour week. There were some times where it really wasn't very busy and I'd maybe cut back my hours, But then there were times that were really busy, say at the end of the quarterly where they were doing quarterly business reviews, that they needed lots and lots of information. But primarily, overall, I did the normal 40-hour week.
So not a lot of overtime or weekend work, right?
No, not really. I mean, it was totally up to me if I wanted to do overtime work. But I wasn't, because I'm a contractor, I wasn't actually paid for it, but I could make it up by taking time off during that week. But primarily, I mean, my boss, she would put in lots of overtime. But as a contractor, I was not required to do overtime.
You were capped in terms of what you could bill them, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, there was a flexibility. Like I said, there were times that it was very slowish, and I'd, make appointments or go on training things. And then during those times where it was extremely busy, I would put in those extra hours.
Did you tend to take work home with you?
Not really. I mean, I certainly kept it in my mind and I would think about it. I did have a laptop, so I could work from home. And I did that not a lot, but at least once or twice a month, I'd do it. And then I find myself working more because I would get up, work, at 7 o'clock and then have lunch. And then I'd be still working at 7 o'clock at night thinking, I'm sorry, I keep tipping my microphone over. So I primarily, I am a person who likes to go into the office and meet people. So I would go and work.
Gotcha. Were there particular types of problems that you would deal with?
Certainly the problems that I worked with was in communication. I found that a lot of times somebody would have an information that I needed, and maybe I didn't articulate it strong enough to get them to say, okay, give me the answer right away. So I feel like I needed to set expectations when I had a project or had something that depended upon deliverables from somebody else to make them understand why it was so important and why they had to hit the deadline. That was the hardest part, I think.
Gotcha. And what did you do if you couldn't solve a problem on your own?
Again, I would try again to communicate with that person. If I still hadn't gotten anything and I needed it, I'd go to my boss and maybe escalate it. But my original go-to was to really communicate well in the beginning. And I found that kind of got through all of those hoops because you built a rapport of that with that person about what needed to be done. And of course, some people get busy and that gets pushed down to the bottom of the pile. But if you just reach out again and ask that question, it helps to move the process along.
Thank you. Could you describe one of the tough situations that you might have had to deal with in this job, if there were any tough ones?
Oh, there certainly were.
I was counting on that.
Primarily the one I just talked about, not communicating well. And it goes into even further than that. If they don't know what they're doing and they just say yes, 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 and you're like, okay, do you really know what you're doing? You really need to push back and say, it's not your fault if you don't know what you're going to do. We can do it together. We can build that problem. So this is an example actually from Staples. I was working as a project manager at the time. I was the subject matter expert on the Staples.com delivery data. And we were putting the two databases, retail and delivery, together. Mm-hmm. Now, the retail side of things, they had a definition of a visit where the internet or Staples.com and delivery had another description of visit. And I had to talk to the IT person, and I kept saying, no, the visit is different. And he would go, yes, 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 yes. And I would be like, no, do you really understand why they're different? And I sat with him a multiple of times. And if I didn't go through that step when he said, yes, 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 we would have gone down a longer period of time without actually getting that taken care of. And because we and myself and the team talked during those agile meetings, those just stand-up meetings, and said, Suresh, do you get this? And he'd go, yes, 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 and would be okay. And then I would talk to Suresh later, and he'd go, no, no, no. So that communication.
Isn't it amazing how that happens all the time?
Yes, 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 yes.
How much flexibility do you have or did you have in determining how you did your job?
I had a lot. My boss was spectacular. She knew her stuff. She had been at the EMC for over 15 years, and she had lots of knowledge about all the systems, as well as being able to present those findings, knowing that her data was powerful. So she gave me a lot of latitude from the beginning of my tenure at Dell EMC to figure things out, to ping her if I had questions. But it was primarily, what I did. We had our usual meetings. We didn't do one-on-ones every week. Sometimes they would get dropped off her schedule, and I kind of felt like if I needed her, she was always there. But I was able to create a very flexible uh, membrane, I guess, of how I did my work.
Gotcha. And you use the term membrane. I use the term framework.
Okay.
Fundamentally, it's not a rote job. You
Right.
operate within the framework of we need to get this output done, and it needs to kind of generally fit these parameters.
Yep.
From there, it's up to you. Get it
Yep.
done by
Yep.
such
Yep.
date time. Got it.
Yep.
What are the most important personal satisfactions connected with this work?
I think, again, I was empowered by my manager to drive the business. We were in the business of selling technology to businesses and consumers. And so my little world was not rocket science, but it was a way to get the mission statement of Dell EMC, which is basically make people's lives better with technology. Sorry. And so I was able, in my little world, to make sure the data was clean, privacy was handled well, and the project managers that were working on these in-person or these media, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, were able to do their job efficiently. So when I would give them information
Oops.
that said it was important, that was a phone on my side, it was important for them to get information about their specific program, I could give it to them so we could optimize the process and work on it better in the future.
Gotcha. What didn't you like about the work? And this isn't about being, criticizing Dell EMC. It's
Yeah.
just about your job.
Yeah. The fact that I wasn't a permanent employee, that was my job. That was very frustrating me because everybody I worked with had great experiences with me. I have great friends that I've made at Dell, but I was unable to find a permanent position with it. But I think the times where I wasn't busy, I found ways that I could fill the time because we had taped a lot of meetings and trainings, and there was a marketing accreditation program that I could go and actually even find out about a specific technology that Dell EMC was promoting. So I liked that, but I found that, I felt guilty because I was learning things when I wasn't contributing to my my quote unquote job. But what my boss tried to explain to me is that wasn't a thing that you disliked. That training program that you were doing was actually building on your experience here at Dell. So you knew what a salesman was telling a prospect client. So that I overcame that dislike of not doing specific work and being able to train. And she let me see that.
Gotcha. As you were talking about your work before, it sounded like there were a couple of things that might be repetitive about it.
Yep.
And you mentioned that example of making sure the data was in from Asia. What else? What else became repetitive about the work?
Well, the lead tracking, I think that's what you were referring to when you first opened this question. But actually, I mean, a lot of time is spent as a data analyst in just converting files. It takes days. Now I am learning a new program called Alteryx, which is a system that takes those data sources of unstructured data, like a Facebook post, as well as data coming from Metrics or Omniture, that actually pulls in web traffic data. Instead of taking days to produce those data conversions, Alteryx, which I'm learning, is taking that ability to be able to put those into minutes, hours, or even minutes. So I think the thing is, technology is bringing together the pain points of a data analyst to be able to do what they do best, which is analyze that data.
Thank you. Not talking about yourself here or specifically about Dell, but looking over the course of your career in this line of work, does there tend to be a lot of turnover in this type of job?
Yes and no. I have had great experiences with doing a data analyst. I was 10 years at one job, 6 years at another, 4.5 years just recently. So I think that the reason that there is tenure in this job and the reason that there isn't is that people who do data analytics know their database. So they have data in their mind that says, okay, that particular reason for that drop in sales was because we had a problem with the database. Now, somebody who comes in new may not know why did December 31st, 2001 dip in sales. Well, it was because of this reason. So the database analysts are kind of respected because they have this knowledge. But if you've been working with the same data over and over, you kind of lose sight of the data, if that makes sense. And what I'm trying to say is, you've seen it so much, you don't need to see those individual things. So when somebody comes in new, fresh, different idea of looking at the data, they may ask questions that, me as an analyst, I already know the answer, so I'm not looking to it. But a new person can look at it and see different things. So in my experience, the reason that I've moved on is because I felt like I know the data too much. I'm doing the same thing over and over, and I need to move on. But I can see why certain people wouldn't stay as a data analyst, because there was that restriction of the governance of the data and not knowing what it all means.
Gotcha. What gave you stress about the role?
The most stressful part of the job is when you have a notion that there's something going wrong and people aren't getting it. They're like, oh yeah, the agency's taking care of that. I'm like, no, you're not getting coded. You won't be tracked. And they're like, oh no, they're taking care of it. And then a month goes by and I have to give results. And they're like, gee, how come we don't have any database analysis for the storage BU? And I'm like, because I told you months ago that they weren't tracking. Oh, the agency was supposed to take care of that. That's frustrating.
The usual people don't listen, do they?
Right.
It's amazing. Laura, I didn't ask you about this before, but are you open to being contacted by folks through like LinkedIn or some other way?
Absolutely. Always connect through LinkedIn. That's fine.
Why don't you spell your name for folks? Laura, and your last name is spelled?
Murtoniemi.
And pronounce it?
Murtoniemi. So it's my personal email address. Should I give that as well?
If you like, or you can give them your LinkedIn profile and have them contact you that way.
Right. It's Laura Murtoniemi at LinkedIn. Just put my Laura Murtoniemi in and you'll find me. So
in other words, folks, if I'm not mistaken, what you would do is linkedin.com/IN/her name, which you can get the spelling of from what she said earlier, and that should bring you to her. And if I'm wrong, do a search on the platform. It's not like there are going to be a lot of people with this name there, right?
Murtoniemi. No.
Right. So folks, I hope you found this helpful, because my goal is to help people learn about the kind of work that they're entering, so that there are fewer surprises, because Lord knows every organization I ever did recruiting for back in the day when I did that, they all paint the rosy picture about everything that's going to happen at work. And a lot is good, and then there's the other stuff. So in doing videos like this, I want to make sure that people have an idea of what they're stepping into, so that there are fewer surprises, because as you know, surprises are rarely good. So
Yep.
I hope you found this helpful. If you're interested in my coaching, you reach out to me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the big game hunter. Mention that you saw the video. I like knowing I'm helping some folks. Once we're connected, send me a message that you're interested in coaching. We'll set up a time for a free discovery call. Hope you have a great day, and take care.